So, without any further ado, a lady who needs very little introduction, a writer of 4 amazing books, and just an amazing person in general. I'm very privileged to have had her on one of my meetups before, and this is going to be an absolutely amazing first Access Agile session. We have Karen Ferris and Agile Leaders. Are you future ready? Thank you very much, Karen. Over to you.
Thanks, Joanna, and welcome everybody. I'll keep an eye on the waiting room and admit people as they manage to find their way in and get rid of that space. However that happens. So yeah, I'm Karen Ferris and I'm an organisational change management consultant. I work with leadership teams to uplift their capability, and I work with many organisations on workforce resilience, and I was doing that well before resilience became a word associated with the pandemic. The future of work is driving the future of leadership. Sorry, I'm keeping an eye, I've got 2 eyes going here, admit. And I'm driven to make a difference to organisations to help them uplift their leadership capability, which is what is absolutely needed at the moment. And I am seeing organisations and their leaders struggling at the moment. Some are floundering, even though they're trying to work out what it is they need to do for the future of work. Some are just putting their hands over their ears and saying, it's just too much, it's too hard. But I'm observing that. So, as I said, I'm driven to make a difference to help leaders and these organisations. The future of work is hybrid. There's no going back to the way it was pre-pandemic. You know, the genie is out of the bottle and the bottle's been broken. People, the researchers, the analysts, surveys are telling us that employees, having had a taste of flexibility and remote work, want that to continue. Some people may want to work remotely 100% of the time. Someone may want to go back to the office, and there's a lot of mixtures in between them. There's a whole spectrum of hybrid models that organisations can implement that best suits their business outcomes and their customers and their consumers. But whatever that hybrid team looks like, leaders, just bear with me. Leaders are struggling and it's uncharted territory. So whilst some leaders of multinational organisations will have been leading hybrid teams or remote teams for many years, for most of our leaders, they've never done this before. And research is revealing that leaders, or most leaders, are not ready. And I'm using the term leader generically for management, bosses, leaders, etc. So uncharted territory. So what does that look like? So as I said, leaders are just not ready to lead the hybrid team, because if leaders think that the way they managed co-located people in the office can just be lifted up to lead teams that are distributed over many, many locations, then it's just they're disillusioned. There's a fundamental difference that leaders and agile leaders need to take to build a high-performing hybrid team. And this is research from a company called Terminal. And they revealed that most leaders are tackling these challenges for the first time. 77% of the people they surveyed said they'd never managed a fully remote team, and 89% said they'd never managed a partially remote team, i.e. the hybrid team. And I really believe that it's not that leaders don't want to get ready. I think they absolutely do, but they need help and leadership development and development to lead a hybrid team. Leadership development's lacking anyway, but if there's any time, it's now to consider what leaders of hybrid teams are going to need. And I can see there's a lot of things in the chat. I will try and get to them, but I'm conscious there's a lot of people. If I don't get to them all, please, my email address is on the last slide. I'm happy to have the conversation, or join me on LinkedIn and ask those questions. So Subhash has said companies and nations that are mostly service providers continue to rely on the traditional office space. Yeah, there will be a whole spectrum, and there's a lot of demand for people to return to the office, which is a totally other conversation. I think the nature of work will change. It will vary by geography, of course, but that's what the research is telling us. Microsoft did some research recently and said, nearly half the population have said, if I'm forced to go back in the office, I'll look for another job. So you may have heard the term the Great Resignation. There's debate about whether it's real or not, but the discussion's out there. Sorry, getting back. So evidence that leaders are not ready was demonstrated by the behaviours that happened early in 2020 and have gone on into 2021. The increase in demand for employee surveillance software in April last year went up by 87% compared to the same time the previous year. That is telling me, and I should probably call them managers or bosses, saying, when they're in their office, I can see them, so I know what they're doing. When they're remote, I don't know what they're doing, and I need to monitor them. In May, the same 2020, it went up by 71% again. So this is a big brother approach. And the things that they are monitoring are things like keystrokes, location tracking, taking screenshots, recording of videos, monitoring internet usage and browser history and all sorts of other things. And, this is Orwellian behavior. And this is just a massive step back. We're being offered the greatest opportunity at the moment to reflect, reimagine and reinvent the way we work. It's probably the biggest opportunity we've been offered in our lifetimes to change the way we work for the better of all, the individual, the team and the business. But this is showing us what's happened is made us take a step back. And I know what employees are doing as well, because they're telling me, they're getting an analog watch or an analog clock and putting the mouse on it because the second hand is making the mouse appear to move or is ticking. People are putting paper clips in the insert key so that they look like they're always typing. People have put weights on the key. People have developed apps that will make you look active. People are doing whatever they can to make sure that Skype and Teams and whatever doesn't say they're away from the desk. And this absolutely means that leadership has to fundamentally change to address this. So whilst we will have to look at lots of things like office space, security, logistics, policies and procedures, technology, all things that are needed for the new way of working, it's the need for a new style of leadership that's going to be paramount. So it's a fundamental mindset shift, and it could be one of the biggest shifts that your organizations and agile leaders will have to make. I really believe there is no going back to the way that it was. I really believe that most employees want some sort of flexibility, whatever that looks like, and there's a whole spectrum available. But when we think about it now, employees in most of the world, employees are in the driving seat. They've proved that they can work from anywhere. So now they're not limited by geography when they're looking for an employer. I'm in Melbourne, Australia. I could work for, depending on logistics, but I could work for an employer in New Zealand or San Francisco because we've proven that we can work remotely. So I have a smorgasbord of potential employers to choose from. So I am in the driving seat as an employee. So we have to look at our approach to our leadership. So most leaders, as I say, are tackling this for the very first time. And the reality is they're not ready. They're floundering despite striving to do the right things. You know, most of our leaders do want to do the right thing. And I find that through all the consultancy and work that I do with leadership teams in all sorts of organizations. But when they're struggling, what that leads to is confusion and consternation for the employee. Who says, well, where is our leader? What's our direction? Where are we going? And employees need connection and they need cohesion as a team, regardless of where they're located. And they need cross-functional and cross-location collaboration. So leaders need a program of learning and being able to leverage leadership best practices that are emerging so that they can actually flourish in this new era of work. And when they do so, team performance and productivity will increase dramatically. And that means you get a return on investment from that leadership development. Productivity equals profitability. So this is what I call a contrast model. When leaders become effective at leading their hybrid team, they're no longer detached from employees. They're connected with everyone, regardless of their location. They're no longer apathetic. They're operating with empathy. And these are some of the uplifts that leaders need to make. They have to move from being indifferent to being compassionate and understanding everybody's position and experience. They cannot have any bias depending whether someone is co-located with them or remote. And it's what we call proximity bias, where higher value is put on the person that you can see and their work than someone you can't see. So they have to move from that to an inclusive environment, one of equity, where everyone is on the same level playing field. They have to move from being invisible to being visible to everybody, regardless where people are. They need to stop monitoring, they need to stop the surveillance and start measuring the right things. And we'll talk about that shortly. Just admitting. They need to move away from rigid, policies and statements to being adaptable. This is new. We're all learning. This is a learning journey. So we're going to make mistakes. There's going to be hiccups. So we need to adapt along the way and learn from that. And leaders need to step out of their comfort zone and into the learning zone. They need a growth mindset to say, yes, this is new, but let's evolve and let's grow because of a result of it. So this is my hybrid leadership model. Excuse me. And this model is showing you the skills, the traits and capabilities and competencies I believe need to be elevated for leaders leading hybrid teams. There's a lot of leadership competencies and skills not shown on this model, and they're things that I'm taking as given, such as providing and giving feedback, emotional intelligence, courage and respect. I'm taking them as a given. This is the capability uplift that I believe leaders need to undertake to effectively lead the hybrid team. Now, thanks, Scott. I'm glad you like it. Scott said he likes the model. And it's been evolving over time. I keep changing it. I've got to stop tinkering. Now, I'd love to share every element of this model with you today, but we have time constraints. So I'm just going to share some of the aspects to give you a sense of where I'm coming from and the uplift that I believe needs to take place. I have written about, I think I've only got 2 more actually to write an article on my website, karenferris.com. Go to the resources section blog. So if you want to deep dive into any one of these aspects of the model, that's where you'll find more detail of the articles on each of them. So let's start and have a little bit of exploration around this model. So in the middle, I'm talking about forming, storming, norming, and performing. Now, many of you may have heard those terms before. It's the Tuckman stages of team development. So forming is when, you know, there's uncertainty, people are seeking guidance. What is my role? What am I supposed to be doing? Storming is when there's a bit of conflict happening. People are sort of elbowing for position, and the sort of resistance to influence over the group and individuals. Norming is when the team is starting to come together and there's a bit of cohesiveness taking place. And performing is when the team says, our concern is getting the job done. So this model's been around since 1965, but I'm proposing that it's a good diagnostic framework for leaders leading and forming hybrid teams. So let's look at each level in that context. Just admitting again. So forming, the biggest lesson, if you like, or learning for leaders in this forming stage is that they need to give this time, this stage time. It's going to take a lot longer for teams to bond and get to know each other when they're distributed than when they're co-located. So it's about giving this time and not trying to rush forward and find things unraveling. It's essential that leaders give clear roles and responsibilities across the team, clear team goals, and a clear shared purpose. And they need to think, what are the ways I can form the team? And this is going to be different for every team. How can I bring the team together? Can I have face-to-face time? Can I get my team co-located in one environment to do some team building and socializing and bonding and getting to know each other? Can I have virtual events that achieve the same sort of outcomes? And there's no right or wrong answer. This is about leaders working with the teams to find out what's going to work. At this stage, it's essential that leaders build trust. Trust between themselves and the team, and across the team as well. And trust starts with having respect and empathy. Every one of us has been through a massive experience over the last 18 months, 2 years. And every one of those experiences is different. Every one of us has felt different things and will have fears and uncertainty and concerns about the way forward. So leaders have to address that. So leading with empathy for each person and their experience. With a distributed team, how do you find out if everybody knows what they're supposed to do, what their roles are and their goals? You ask them. So communication is paramount. The next stage is storming. This is where there's, like I say, elbowing and there's conflict arising. But there's false harmony as people are keeping things to themselves. They don't feel safe in questioning or challenging. So their dissent is getting buried. And they're not feeling safe to question or challenge. So leaders need to work to uncover that conflict and manage it at this stage. So they need to encourage conflict and manage it. So there's constructive conflict to understand what's going on. What are the team needing? And this is a time when leaders need to create an environment of psychological safety. And as most of you will probably know, that's the environment where everyone feels safe to question, to challenge, to ask questions, to share mistakes. In the safety, they know that there's not going to be any repercussions or reprisals. And that's the only way you're going to get people to voice their feelings. If they don't and things are just left buried, then that's a dangerous place to be. So leaders need to provide mechanisms for the team to connect socially, whether in person or virtually, and start to get to know each other better as part of the storming stage. Norming. So this is where the team now are starting to get to know each other. Conflict is no longer the dominant thing in the team. With a hybrid team, it's key that leaders document team agreements. How are we going to handle conflict? So everyone knows what can be expected. You know, they can't just, as they used to be in the office, just, you know, knock on the door and ask something as easily. So documenting rules of engagement or terms of engagement, I shouldn't use the word rules. So terms of engagement. And working out at this point what the team member preferences are. So profiling, and there's lots of profiling systems and approaches out there, and some are very simple. It's really just getting to know, how does each team member respond to situations like conflict? How do team members like to be engaged and communicated with? So finding out, does Karen like to be shown the big picture if we're collaborating with Karen? Does she like the big picture, or does she like the detail? So knowing that enhances the communication and collaboration. It's often easier to recognize those preferences when you're co-located, because you would, you know, maybe start presenting something and I'm going, no, I need the detail. When you're working remotely, that's not so evident. You can tell when you look at someone's office whether they're a big picture person or a detail person. And the final stage is performing. This is where we have high levels of autonomy. So to get the leaders in power, provide autonomy, provide clear expectations, and then get out of the way. There is no place for micromanagement and no place for surveillance. That has got to stop. At this stage, leaders need to keep a close watch on the team so we don't slip back into earlier stages of Tuckman's model. Easier to sense people slipping when you're co-located with them. So a real watchful eye needs to take place. So we stay performing. So let's look at the top of the model and setting objectives and measuring performance. And this could be one of the biggest mindset shifts for leaders as we move into this new era of work. We've already seen that bosses, if you like, are measuring people by keystrokes and hours at the desk. And you know, and I know that that has nothing to do with productivity or performance, nothing. So firstly, we need to set objectives that motivate people. And I suggest we set objectives that are learning, that are performance objectives, not learning objectives. And the difference is a learning objective could be, Daniel, I'll pick someone on the list. Daniel, run 3 town hall meetings to reach over 700 of our employees in the next quarter. That's a learning objective. Sorry, that's a performance objective. A learning objective is making it into a learning goal by saying, Daniel, find a way to reach over 700 of our employees in the next quarter. Now Daniel has the freedom to innovate, problem solve, think big picture, not being told how to do it, just what the outcome is. When we have remote workers, ambiguity, there is no room for it. We have to be absolutely clear about our expectations and ensure that they are understood. Often easier when you're physically face to face to see someone going, oh, I don't think they've actually got what I mean. Harder when you're remote. We need to make sure that people aren't stressed out about their objectives. Again, easier to assess when you're talking to someone about their objective when you're face to face and you're going, they're not comfy with this, they're getting stressed out. So make sure that objectives that you set are are achievable and that the employee is comfortable with them. And as I mentioned before, do not fall prey to proximity bias. So higher value on the work carried out by someone you can see, as opposed to work carried out by someone you cannot observe. And it's a real thing, and it's a big thing that leaders are going to have to overcome if they're going to effectively lead the team. Measuring performance. I've already mentioned micromanagement. Leaders must learn how to measure performance across the hybrid team. They need to stop measuring the wrong things. They need to measure the right things in the right way. Most of our employees are knowledge workers. You know, they're not producing widgets and I can say, oh, you produced 3 last week and you produced 5 this week, so your productivity's gone up. Our knowledge workers think for a living. They come up with ideas, they problem solve, they innovate, they create. Leaders are going to have to work out, how do you measure the performance of the knowledge worker? It's not the hours at the desk. And even if you can see someone sitting at a desk, that does not mean they're productive. That's a disillusional boss that thinks that you standing at your desk or sitting at your desk for 8 hours means you're productive. You know that's rubbish, and so do I. So it needs to measure outcomes. We need to measure performance. Sorry, I forgot to hit enter. We need to measure performance on a regular basis. Scrap the annual performance review. That's what I say. It's a waste of time. Telling me on a biannual or an annual basis how I'm performing and how I need to improve is too infrequent and it's not timely. You need to tell me at the time. You need to tell me in the week or the fortnight so I can do something about it. It's just demotivating. So feedback should be continual and often. So I think that's a really big shift in mindset that a lot of people, a lot of leaders are going to have to make. So capability invisibility as well. Capability invisibility is a term that means when a capability is not visible to the leader, then an employee can be given a task that they're not equipped to, or their useful skills are not being utilized. So I need to know what their capabilities are, so I don't give them something that they're going to panic and freak out because they just haven't got the capability to do it. And I have to make sure that I'm giving them things to do that makes use of their best skills, of their capabilities. And there's two sides to this coin. So the leader needs to, from a leader perspective and an employee perspective. So the leader needs to know the capability of every member of the team and the wide range of capabilities of the team may be less visible in a distributed environment. So leaders should not delegate if there's not a capability. That just causes stress and anxiety. Yes, you can put an employee give them a stretch target and they will go out of their comfort zone. They'll step out of the comfort zone into the stretch zone, but you do not want to put them into the horror zone. That's not a place they should be. And we also need to make sure that we're utilizing the skills they've developed, that they've worked hard to master, so they're not demotivated and disengaged. You know, I just did that training course and I'd spent the week doing this, and my leader's just not even acknowledging that I've developed and grown. From an employee perspective, every member of the team should know what the capability and strengths of their co-workers are so that they can leverage them. In the physical face-to-face environment, you can be more highly aware of your colleagues' skills and capabilities because you overhear conversations, you hear that someone's been on some training, or you hear that someone helped another team do something, and you start to know what their capabilities and skills are. That's not going to happen in a distributed environment. So leaders need to make sure that everyone has access to each person's strengths, skills, capabilities, so they know that they can reach out and ask for their help. So consider conducting a regular audit of skills and make that data accessible across the organisation. So any employee can access the capabilities of other people and leverage them. And that's great for collaboration and cross-team collaboration and team building. Emotional support. This should be provided at all times, but it's especially important for employees working in a hybrid team, especially if they're working in one for the first time. So employee well-being should be should be the priority for every leader. So despite the fact that many employees are welcoming the freedom to work from home or work from anywhere, we have to acknowledge that it can lead to feelings of isolation and depression, and the honeymoon period might wear off very quickly. So many may have underestimated the value of the enabling environment that is the office. So there are chemicals such as serotonin, which are not generated. Serotonin comes when you've got a sense of belonging and you're sitting with your team in a familiar spot. So leaders need to regularly check in. And we have a campaign here in Australia called Are You OK? The initials Are You OK? It's a great campaign, but it's a binary answer, yes or no. I think you should check in with people and say, how are you feeling? And then ask, how are you really feeling? And leaders need to do that on a regular basis with all of their employees. It's easier to sense if someone's struggling if you can see them on a daily basis. When you've got people working remotely, you need to check in on a regular basis to find how they're doing and take action. Leaders need to be vulnerable, and vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. The chances are that you are experiencing or have experienced the same stresses, anxiety and concerns through this pandemic and beyond that your team have. And if you share those feelings with your team, they will do the same and they'll open up. And that's a really powerful thing, you know, and there are degrees of vulnerability, but just saying, yeah, I struggled with that too. Or yeah, that was concerning to me and this is what I did. You know, you're not made of stone. You're not the superhero with a, you know, steel armor. Show your vulnerability and others will do the same. We need to lead with empathy. As I've said, everybody's had different experiences throughout this pandemic, and leaders need to lead with empathy. We often say that empathy is walking a mile in someone else's shoes. I don't believe that's the right way to describe it. I think it's about understanding how someone else feels walking in their shoes. That's empathy. It's about removing your filters and biases and really understanding the feeling that others have in their context and reach out with help and support. You know, if a person is really struggling, you don't have to be, as a leader, a general practitioner or a medical profession. You help the person find the right support. And that's what a lot of managers, bosses struggle with at the moment, because they're going, I don't want to know if they're struggling because I don't know how to deal with it. So we need to make sure that leaders can deal with it and find the people the support they need. Being empathetic is far easier to say than do. And when people have concerns or fears of what's going to happen, and they want to be protected and have a sense of self-preservation, then compassionate leaders validate those feelings as normal. It's okay to be concerned. It's okay to be fearful about a return to the office because of safety reasons. It's okay to have those feelings. I'm going to move on pretty quickly because I know we're going to run out of time because we lost 10 minutes at the start of the session. Equity and inclusivity, absolutely important. We used to talk about working from home as shirking from home. You know, it was frowned upon. We now need to make sure that everybody is equal, regardless of where they working from, and that everybody is included. When you are leading a hybrid team, your meetings need absolutely great facilitation. You need to make sure that everybody has a voice, that everybody is heard, that there's no one gets talked over. Participation, you need to encourage people into the conversation. And equity, we've now got, you know, we've talked about diversity, equity and inclusion for some time, and that's usually based on, you know, gender, religion, sexual preference, whatever it might be. We're now adding to those categories, if you like, of those in the office and those not in the office. So we need to make sure that there's not an us and them developing, which can easily take place. Make sure everybody feels included. Regular drop-ins, make that impromptu phone call or a video call, as you would have done in the office when you're just dropping by someone's desk. How are you going? Yeah, it only takes 5 minutes. Show that you care. Okay. So want to look at optimized technology. One of the reasons many of the C-suite and many leaders around the globe are saying you will come back to the office, and they're refusing, they say they're going to refuse people to remain working remotely. They're citing the inability to collaborate as one of the prime reasons. And the technology that's now emerging is putting an end to that argument. We have to move beyond the Zoom and the Teams and those experiences of the last 18 to 20 months. And whilst those platforms, Zoom and Teams, are constantly improving the experiences because they know they need to respond to the need, there are emerging technologies changing the game as we speak. Now, I've created a short video. I've amalgamated 3 videos into a short one to share with you what's possible. The opening one is Google Project Starline. Some of you may be aware of these things, where you look at a pane of glass and you see what looks like the person on the other side of that pane of glass. Not an image, a 3D. The second is Microsoft Mesh, building meeting rooms with directional cameras, allowing attendees who are physically present to interact and connect at the same work desk and table as those that are remote. And the third is Facebook Horizons Workroom. So let's watch and just think, can we still argue that you can't collaborate across locations?
So imagine instead of looking at a screen, you're looking at a magic pane of glass. And through that glass, you're seeing another person on the other side.
Hi, you see me? Say hi to Auntie. Oh my gosh, I love you. Eddie.
So you look beautiful.
And then you just start having a conversation, just like you would if you were physically together.
Like, I feel like you're here. This is wild. I can see that curl in your hair. I can see how your sweater is falling. And then you'll be saying, oh, lipstick more.
There are really 3 breakthroughs coming together here. One is the ability to capture people as they are. The second is the ability to compress that information and send it over existing networks efficiently. And the third is the ability to render that person viewable through a 3-dimensional display. So it really feels like you're talking with someone right in front of you.
Don't say goodbye. Don't go away. That was mind-blowing. I've seen a lot, but I've never seen this. I felt that she was present and I felt that I was present in that moment too. It was like she was here.
We have two planes right now on the same trajectory.
As we put people first, technology fades into the background and feels like anything but.
Aisha, what do you think?
I think we had 330, maintaining 2800. We'll be clear for approach.
Excellent.
This changes the way we see the world, and in turn, changes the world we see.
These numbers are looking great, actually.
There's promise in the possibilities, and what we see and create next will stretch the imagination.
Good morning, Sarah.
Morning.
Slowly coming towards the thumb.
A world without boundaries.
Good job. A lot better than yesterday.
Yeah.
Excellent. Slowly bring
A world where technology enhances, not limits, humanity. With people front, center, and in the spotlight. The future is here, and here can be anywhere. Introducing Microsoft Mesh.
So amazing stuff that's coming our way, and everybody will be scrambling to be ahead of the competition. So all of our leaders need to be digital savvy, keeping an eye on what's available, how we can improve the hybrid experience and the collaboration and the meetings. So what I'm just going to spend some time now, not with more examples of more advice, with a strategic 7-step checklist for you to determine, yes, Myro's very good as well, having collaborate sections. Antoine, that's brilliant, thank you. I was using that today, it's very powerful. So a 7-step checklist, so you can determine whether you have in your organization the leadership capability to lead the hybrid team. So have somewhere to keep a track of your answers. They're all yes and no answers, and there's only 7 of them, so it shouldn't be difficult. Even if you don't have a pen and paper, you've got, 7 fingers. So I will ask you the question, and the answer, as I said, is yes or no. And note that I am saying all, not the leader, Bob, who works in Sydney, is brilliant at that, but nobody else is. All of your leaders. This cannot be a leader by exception. This has to be everybody. So question number 1, do all of your leaders measure their employees' performance by outcomes and value delivered, not hours? Do all your leaders measure employee performance? Yes or no? Question number 2, do all of your leaders empower their employees and then get out of the way, trusting them to do the right thing? Yes or no? Question number 3. Do all of your leaders lead with empathy and really understand the feelings and the reality of their employees? Yes or no? Question number 4. Do all of your leaders run effective hybrid meetings where everyone gets a voice, everyone is included regardless of where they are working from? Yes or no? Question number 5. Do all your leaders treat everybody equally regardless of where they work? Do all your leaders treat everyone as equal regardless of their location? Yes or no? Question number 6. Are all your leaders looking at the latest and greatest technology for communication and collaboration to lead the high-performing hybrid team, or is your future limited to Zoom and MS Teams? Are they digitally savvy? And number 7, do all of your leaders and each member of their team know the capabilities of everyone else in the team? Yes or no? So that's it. That's the 7-step checklist to get a sense of where you're at. If you've scored 5 or above, congratulations, you're building the leadership capability to lead the hybrid team. If you scored 3 or 4, you're getting there, but you've got a way to go. And if you scored less than 3, I would recommend some immediate action. You're putting your teams and the organization at risk. Regardless of your score, though, improvement is as easy as reaching out for the right advice and guidance on the best way forward. So I do apologize that this was somewhat rushed. As I said, I lost 10 minutes at the beginning, so I had to try and make that up. But I do appreciate your participation and listening and watching. If you do have questions that I did not manage to see in the chat, or you want to reach out to me post this, Karen@karenferris.com. Just want to share your feedback, what you thought. I would love to hear from you. Connect with me on LinkedIn. You can find me there, same picture. As was mentioned at the beginning, I've written 4 books about leadership, organisational change and resilience. If you go to karenferris.com to the bookstore and enter the code hybrid at checkout, you'll get 10% off whatever book you order. That's my gift to you. I thank you. I think my time, I've got 3 minutes. If there's any questions, please chuck them in the chat now, and I'll address them. Okay, no questions. As I say, if you think about anything post the presentation, please reach out. Once again, thank you so much. Thank you.
Karen, am I audible?
Thank you so much, Karen.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.